You are watching the Exceptional Conservative Network. For more information, go to www.tecntv.com. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Permanent Associates. I'm your host, Randy Perm. Hey, we got a very special guest with us, joining by phone. It was going to be on video, but got some technical issues going on, so we decided to just switch over to phone. So hopefully we won't have any more glitches with that, but it's all good because, we adjust and adapt and overcome as always on this show. But we have Chris Skates. He is, I'm telling you, a phenomenal guy. And, I was reading and stuff, and I heard of him before, but I wasn't like putting two and two together until I read through his bio, and I was like, okay, that's why I seen that name. But he's the author of Moonshine Over Georgia, a novel based on actual events. He is a former speechwriter and policy advisor for two administrations, a chemist for 30 years, and the author of four novels and over 300 articles and short stories. Skates left his 30-year career as a chemist to become a speechwriter and advisor to Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, and then served as a senior advisor in the Trump administration. He is also a leukemia warrior. Chris writes fiction that features strong men that love their families and communities and exhibit courage, dedication, and valor. His new book, Moonshine Over Georgia, features his real-life grandfather, a protagonist who was just such a man. Chris Skates' foray into government seemed into hyperdrive. Excuse me. He felt it was his patriotic duty to do he could to restore our nation to its first principles and greater respect for life. He was an energy policy wonk and had the honor of collaborating with the White House a few times on key issues. When Governor Bevin, excuse me, I can't talk today, wasn't reelected in 2019, Skates began to prepare a return to private life when he was appointed as a senior advisor in the Trump administration. He headed to Washington, D.C. with his family, and his latest novel is based on a true life account. Author Chris Skates takes readers into a world vastly different from the good old boy exploits depicted on popular TV, drawing on his grandfather's years of tireless and perilous operations, prison interviews, and historical documents. Skates escorts the reader to a time in America full of heartbreak and heartbreaking bravery. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to some and introducing to others, Mr. Chris Skates. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. What a great introduction.
No problem. No problem. My pleasure. My pleasure. So you're currently on the road right now, and you got a lot of stuff going on, and I wanted to ask you what prompted you to decide to leave out of the world of chemistry and science and jump into politics.
As a chemist, my role as a chemist was always in power plants, nuclear power and coal-fired power plants. I was in several different types of those. And
Mm.
chemistry is actually pretty involved in the making of electricity. People don't realize that. But as my career went on, and I was in that field for 30 years, I know I became more and more pulled into complying with environmental regulations.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to use this phrase in my own mind that the power plants that I worked for were being killed by the death of 1,000 green cuts. One regulation on top of another on top of another. I was afraid was going to shut our plants down. So I began to study environmental and energy policy and became somewhat of a subject matter expert in those areas. And so I started writing. At first I was just writing fiction, which is my real passion. But then I started writing on policy issues and went to interview a guy named Matt Bevin who was going to run for governor of Kentucky. And we connected and saw a lot of things the same way, and he recognized my expertise in energy policy. So ultimately, I was appointed as an energy advisor and speechwriter for him. So yeah, I went from a laboratory and being a chemist to a speechwriter, and it was quite a jump, but it was an amazing ride, and he and I worked well together for his entire 4 years. We still stay in touch. And then, as you read, I went on to the Trump administration, and then I only wrote a couple speeches. I wrote one for Vice President Pence, and I helped collaborate with the president's speechwriting team on another, both on energy. But I was mostly in energy policy then. So in 5 years, I went from a power plant guy to the White House.
Oh wow! Oh wow! Okay, that's awesome. And you know, you went from doing energy, and then went into policy. What was that transition like difficult for you, or did it seem like it was kind of like a seamless transition? Because I know I'm a policy guy myself, and it can be a little nuanced, and you're kind of like, what in the world am I reading here? What was it like that for you, or?
It was some of both. Whenever I was in the energy world,
Mm-hmm.
in both roles, I was very comfortable, and that's top of my game. There were some things I got pulled into that I had to learn. Grants, public policy like public benefits, welfare, child support, things of that nature.
Right.
I had to write on those topics where I really had to do my homework and I really had to sweat.
Yeah.
But then when I got into the Trump administration, I was a straight up energy guy, so I was in my comfort zone then.
Okay.
And by the way, just for your listeners, President Trump is far and away the best energy president we've ever had. And I've watched it closely for most of my life. And what he was doing in the energy space was really transformative and was putting us into a really good place.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, I was in the Biden administration. I got sick. I got cancer while I was in the Trump administration. And I was in the hospital for a long time. And surprise, surprise, all of a sudden I get discharged from the hospital and I'm in the Biden administration. There had been an election while I was in the hospital. So I was with them for about 6 months, and with the difference could not have been more stark in the way they approached energy and the way President Trump approached energy. And I actually was not fired. I was one of the few Trump people that was held over, and they asked me to stay, but I resigned because of ideological differences.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. You know, a lot of people, when there's a switching of parties, you know, between administrations, a lot of people from the previous administration would leave because there would be some ideological differences, and if you stuck around, you would be seen as a hypocrite and just you know, a grifter, just trying to stick around and get money by switching up positions. So you did the right thing. You did the right thing. Yeah, so, hey, congratulations on that. And yeah, you know, seeing what you did in both the policy spectrum, working in the energy sector, and everything else. What are your thoughts right now on the Biden administration's removal from of, you know, the America's energy independence in the oil industry?
I'm just flabbergasted. I'm discouraged. I'm angry. I've published several articles on the topic.
Yeah.
We are making ourselves incredibly vulnerable, and it's completely self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, you know, off into the policy thing a bit, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but one thing that the average citizen may not realize is energy in the electrical grid needs to flow in a balanced fashion. So if you
Yeah.
We've always had balance so that we could rush power from other sectors into that sector. Well, now because the Biden administration has closed so many coal plants, and it's really started under Obama, we don't have the balance we need. Where did you see that manifest itself? Well, you saw it in California, and you saw it in Texas. They've had major blackouts in both those states
Yeah.
because they were too reliant on renewable energy. Renewable energy is by definition intermittent. So solar doesn't generate when the sun doesn't shine, and wind doesn't generate when the wind's not blowing.
Mm-hmm.
So we make ourselves more vulnerable by not having that constant energy flow that coal, natural gas, nuclear provides. And so we're pulling energy off the grid without having adequate resources back on the grid. Renewables aren't even going to come close to making up the difference.
Right.
And I'm really concerned about that. And we are being set up for blackouts in places that we've never had them before, like the Midwest. Kentucky, where I live, came very close to a blackout back this past summer.
Wow. I'm in Texas, and I was here, during what they was calling, the deaf winter, and it was
Yeah.
crazy. It was crazy here. I lived in Texas good 20 some years, and never had I experienced the winter that we experienced in 2020. It was it wasn't even so much the weather; it was the reaction to the weather. That was a bad part.
Yeah.
It was like you said, the power grid went down. Heat went off grid. It was just like madness. But luckily, I'm from Chicago, so I'm a winter baby anyway, so it didn't really bother
Yeah.
me too
Yeah.
much. But it was. But just seeing the neighbors and how they struggled and everything goes, it was something that
And
we had to take
one
into
of the things you
consideration.
guys suffered from it in Texas,
Hmm.
you suffered from not just your. It's unbelievable how many windmills Texas had allowed,
Yeah.
as conservative state as that. But that aside for a moment, Texas had also made the mistake of shutting down so many of their coal plants, and Texas uses a lot of what's called lignite coal, and going with lots and lots of natural gas plants. Well, natural gas plants are all well and good. It's still fossil energy up until the point that the natural gas stops flowing. A coal
Mm.
plant has a 90-day supply of coal sitting in a great big pile right next to it. So no matter what the weather conditions are, we got great big bulldozers, and we'll go out there and get coal and keep generating electricity. Natural gas is relying on a pipeline.
Yeah.
And part of what happened to you guys during your blackout is your pipeline valve failed closed.
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
your natural gas got cut off at the same time your windmills were frozen, at the same time your solar panels were covered with snow, and you had 246 people
Yeah.
die from cold.
Yeah, yeah, it was tragic, and the energy company, one of the the energy board, I should say, they were in another state. They like worked and did their advisory out of another state, so they're really pissed off the Texans. We were like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that somebody from a land far, far away is controlling our energy, and we're down here like
Yeah.
what in the world? So it was madness, and it was just now, but recently we just had a ballot measure. We just had our constitutional amendments on our elections this week, and that's one of the ballot measures is to create funding and boards and what have you to make Texas more energy independent again. So hopefully that ballot measure passes and Texas decides to pull their head out of their fourth point of contact and get back on board the way it used to be. Because like I said, that was the first winter that I experienced here that it was that bad in terms of energy balance.
Well, I hope that passes because that'd be a good step in the right direction. We need
Yep.
to do that across the nation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Chris, I want to ask you about the speaker race. The last few weeks, the nation's been on pause on getting anything done, which, in my opinion, I think was a good thing because they've been just every bill they passed. It seemed like there was some kind of funding going towards Ukraine, and then it started with Israel. So I'm glad we kind of put a pause on that. But just yesterday, Representative Mike Johnson was elected to the Speaker of the House, and I want to get your thoughts on that frenzy that went on.
Yeah, I think we came out ahead. It was a messy process, but
Mm-hmm.
I have to say the conservatives won this one. I think Bill Johnson is a significant upgrade from McCarthy as far as conservatism goes. And I still have contacts on the Hill, and I talked to a couple of guys last night, and they were pretty pleased. They say Johnson's a very level-headed guy, very smart guy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
certainly more conservative than McCarthy was. Now, I think we have to temper our expectations. He's only got 2 weeks to get some of these budget resolutions passed. He's got a really tough battle, so we need to pray for him, and we need to stand behind him. And we can't be thinking, well, if we don't like what he does in 2 weeks, let's replace him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get things done. Where we can really judge him more fairly will be after the first of the year.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. I agree totally. You know, Mike Johnson is a level-headed, hardline conservative. So that the fiscal restraint of Congress is much needed, and I think he'll be the one to literally put the gavel gavel down on these things. And so I think January, from now until January, will be the test to see if the Republicans will maintain the House. And if they go into 2024 still bickering and not unifying, then they will rightfully lose control of the House. So
Yeah, I think that's
I
exactly right.
yeah, I hope they
I don't think that's going to. I like the vibe. Again, I was talking to two sources last night,
mhm.
and the vibe is good. It was a really positive response to Johnson. I like that Scalise stood with him. I think it's kind of a unifying. Everybody wants to unify on the Republican side, and I think that was the spirit coming
Yeah.
out of yesterday. So I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Johnson. My pick for speaker was between him, Byron Donalds. I was kind of on the fence with Jim Jordan, but I was okay with it if he would have got selected. I was okay with it, but I was on the fence with him. I was like, he's a little like erratic, but I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
you and I were about the same exact place because I was a Byron Donalds, Mike Johnson guy.
Yeah,
The only thing that I'm a little bit reluctant about Byron is that's a lot to ask of a guy that just got there, but I guess that's true of both of them. But
true. Yeah.
either one of them are going to be good, and I think they'll work together well. I think that'll be a good team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. Let's talk about your book, your new book here, Moonshine Over Georgia, and I read the excerpt that's there on Amazon yesterday, and I really liked the opening chapter. I was like, okay, thanks for the cliffhanger. Now I have to order it so I can finish the rest of the rest of the chapter there, rest of the book. But I wanted to ask you, uh huh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead and finish your thought.
This is my fourth book, and I'm really, really proud of this one. Obviously, it's about my grandfather is the main character, the protagonist. My grandfather in real life was a revenue officer in the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
Those were the guys that went after moonshine stills.
Mm-hmm.
And moonshine stills, people in our generation can't really even identify with how rural the
Yeah.
South was back then. The woods went on for miles and miles. So these guys had these moonshine stills sitting way back in the creeks and the hollers, and my grandfather had to go find them, and they would bust them up with an axe. They would shoot them up so they would leak, but mostly they were after the moonshiners. And during Prohibition, it was a constitutional violation to make moonshine. So when Prohibition was repealed in '33, and my grandfather stayed a revenuer into 1952, then it was just a tax violation. Well, my grandfather, even though he worked for the Revenue Department and was a law officer for them, he didn't really care about the tax. What he cared about was the kids in his community.
Yeah.
And moonshine during the 30s and 40s was a multi-million-dollar business, and it was the drug of choice. It was the fentanyl, the methamphetamine of the 30s and 40s.
Mm.
And in a lot of his cases, he had moonshiners who were unscrupulous, who were making moonshine out of mash that was full of maggots and dead rats.
Oh.
Or worse, they didn't know what they were doing, and they would make methanol, which is toxic,
Mm-hmm.
instead of ethanol. And in a lot of cases, they blinded people. In one of his cases, 300 people in Atlanta were blinded in one night by methanol.
Wow.
So he was a non-apologetic crusader. He wanted that out of his community, and he had the skill set to do it. I was able to interview one moonshiner who was 93 years old when I sat down with him in a nursing home in Panama City Beach, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, did you know a revenue agent back in Georgia where you used to make moonshine named C.E. Kid Miller? That was my grandfather. And he said, I didn't just know that SOB. He's the one that put me in jail. So I had a gold mine
Gold
of
mine, yeah.
information from this. We talked for 3 hours, and he told me, he said, son, your grandpa was one of the most courageous men I ever knew, and he was relentless. And he said, he chased me through the woods one night on foot for 12 miles. And he said, I got away from him that night, but eventually he caught me. And he said he pretty well shut down the liquor business in the whole western part of Georgia. And then central to the plot is the real-life murder investigation that my grandfather was a lead investigator on, of a man named Wilson Turner by a man named John Wallace. John Wallace was like a moonshine kingpin, and Wilson Turner was working for him. And my grandfather was trying to find Wallace's big still. He had a still that was almost like a factory. It wasn't like a little still back, little cute one.
Mm-hmm.
And so Wallace ended up murdering Turner. Well, Turner, my grandfather was trying to get him to become an informant. So murder wasn't normally in my grandfather's jurisdiction. But when this young man was killed that he was trying to get to be an informant, he took it personally and he got involved in the murder investigation. So that's all the central plot of my book. By the way, that murder investigation was turned into a movie in 1983 called Murder in Coweta County. Andy Griffith played the killer. Only time he ever played a killer.
Mm.
But they left my grandfather's investigative work out of it. So my book tells a more well-rounded version of the story because I had the information from my grandfather. He taught me a lot about it, and I did a lot of research.
Okay, gotcha. Now, if you'd have said Andy Griffith played your grandfather, that'd have been like, that'd be like an awesome thing. Because Andy Griffith is known, Andy Griffith is known to be playing, the law enforcement side, not so much the bad guy. So yeah,
Yeah, he's pretty creepy. You can find that on YouTube, by the way, and he's a pretty creepy bad guy.
Okay, awesome. Now, I'm familiar with moonshine a little bit because now it's kind of I'm gonna say legal, but yeah, it's legal now because you can go to the liquor store and buy the little mason jars and it has moonshine. It's made by some company that makes moonshine and they have the different flavors and what have you. And there's even a TV show on I think it's either AMC or History Channel, one of those two, but it's called Moonshiners, and they show the intricacies of of making moonshine. And you're right, it's nothing like, back in the day, in the woods. Although they try to set the scene up where they're doing it in the woods and what have you, but it's not the same. It's much more regulated now and safer and what have you. And growing up in Chicago, my family's out of the South, out of Tennessee, so I grew up around them drinking, and my great great uncle, he my grandmother's brother, he used to make moonshine in the backyard, right behind it. It was like
Wow.
he had a chicken coop, and the still was right behind the chicken coop, behind some bushes. He showed that to me, and I was like, yeah, no thanks, don't know about that. But yeah, that's crazy. So
Much safer now. It's not near as volatile. It was a big crime back then. And the money got so big in the 40s. The price of moonshine went up in the 40s. A gallon of moonshine, this is a real number. I found it in some old newspaper clippings.
mm-hmm.
A gallon of moonshine in 1944 in Georgia was going for $20.
Wow.
So when the money got that big, the crime and the violence went up, and organized crime got involved. And so that's when things really, the city fathers in the little southern towns looked the other way as long as people were just having a little drink on the weekend. But when moonshine started fueling prostitution and gambling houses and violence, then they wanted it shut down. That's where my grandfather was really at the peak of his career.
I see. Now you wrote like three, was it three other books or four other books aside from this one?
Yeah,
What made you
yeah.
decide? What made you decide to kind of like shift gears and write this particular book about actual events versus the fictions?
This was actually the first book I ever tried to write. When I sat down to write it at first in 2002 after I had a couple short stories published, and I don't know, I just got writer's block. I wrote the first 2 pages of chapter one, which still are in the book to this day, and that was as far as I could get, and I ended up putting it in a drawer in my writing desk and
Mm-hmm.
walking away from it. And then I believe that God guides our steps. God guided me to write a story about Noah and the Ark called The Rain, and it's on Amazon also. So I wrote The Rain and The Tower, the sequel, which is about the Tower of Babel. And
Mm-hmm.
then I wrote some other short stories. Just a lot of things in life happened. And I don't remember what brought me back. But I got those 2 pages out one night in 2015, and I said, it's time to write the story I've always wanted to write. So because it was about my grandfather, I was very passionate about it. And
Yeah.
just thought on it, and I went down to the scenes of the crime. There were a couple nights I sat out in the woods at midnight, just like my grandfather had to do when he was taken out of the still in the same places, just so I could get the same feel he got.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a blast to write.
Oh wow, wow, that's awesome. So I would take it that, like me, your grandfather is a very big influence in your life in the way you grew up and doing and decide to do things in life, right?
Yes, probably the most important. He
Yeah.
was both my father and my grandfather were very stern, but my father could be violent with me at times. My grandfather never was.
Right. Right.
And my father was my exposure to the Bible, to Christianity. He took me to church. He also we loved the same things: ball and baseball and hunting and fishing. And so he took me to do all those things. So we were very
Mm-hmm.
very close. I've never had another relationship like that one. I was closer to him than I've ever been to any other man.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here with my grandfather. My grandfather, I used to growing up, although my dad was in my life as well, but I clung to my grandfather much more because he kind of exposed me to like his world, so watching
Yeah,
westerns, every day after I got home from school, the Rifleman, Big Valley, Bonanza, uh, Wyatt Earp show, watching all those, I still watch them to this very day, every now and then I throw on the
yeah,
TV and watch those just kind of reminisce about about those days, and he taught me how to
yeah,
roll cigarettes because he was a smoker. so I
yeah,
I would end up becoming his cigarette machine, but it was but it was he was a great influence in my life and a definite strong role model. What it means to be a man and take care of your family and what have you. So, I was just talking with my dad last night, and him and I, we got a very strong relationship as well, but it's not as strong as it was with my grandfather. Strangely enough, but
yeah,
you're
yeah.
right about that. Yeah. Chris, I'm gonna let you go. So tell people how they can support you and what do you have coming up next, and how they can follow you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I don't have a website yet. I'm in the process of getting one up and running, but you can find me on Twitter, Seascape81, at Seascape81 on Twitter or X, whatever they call it now. Chris Cates on Facebook. But the thing I would love for your listeners to do the most is go to Amazon and type in Moonshine Over Georgia, or go to Amazon.com and type in Chris Cates author. It'll take you to all my books. Moonshine Over Georgia is available in paperback, Kindle, but I also produced and directed an audiobook. I hired a voice actor who just knocked it out of the park playing the part of my grandfather. So you can also listen to it on Audible or Spotify.
Awesome.
Great audiobook of you book.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. Be safe out there on the road, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. God bless. Bye bye. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris Skates. Hey, great, great guy. I'm telling you, you got to go get his book and check it out. Matter of fact, get the whole series. If you ain't doing anything, You know, probably make a great Christmas gift to the kids or to some loved ones or whatnot. Moonshine Over Georgia, a novel based on actual events. Check that out on Amazon, like you said. And once again, you can follow him on Twitter, Chris Skates. Excuse me, Chris Skates, 81 on Twitter. And ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, I was actually reminiscing as we was talking. I was reminiscing about a lot of things and thinking about moonshine, and I remember my first experience with moonshine, and oh my God, burned my esophagus, chest. Oh my God, yeah, it was a bad thing. But every now and then, I dwell in some moonshine here and there. And moonshine pickles. If you, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you right now. If you never had moonshine pickles, oh my God, they're delicious. They're delicious. I'm just gonna tell you right now. But you can't get them like right. When you just let them soak overnight type of thing. No. You got them. You got to let those bad boys sit for for a few weeks. Maybe a couple of months even. And great food. Great stuff. Matter of fact, you could chop them up and put them in a hot dog. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You heard it from here. You heard it right here. But folks, this is gonna be a short show today because we got thunderstorms going on right now, and a lot of stuff I gotta get taken care of. But I will keep you all in the loop as we go on. I'm in the works of taking care of county business. Let me put it like that. So, but y'all be safe. Have a great weekend, and or great rest of the week rather, and into the weekend. And we'll catch you all when I catch you. Be safe. God bless you all, and don't do anything I wouldn't do because you don't want to go to jail. Take it easy. God bless you all, and be safe out there. You are watching the Exceptional Conservative Network. For more information, go to www.tecntv.com.
In 1729, a passionate and eager to learn young man named Benjamin Franklin bought the one-year-old Pennsylvania Gazette, and in a short period of time was able to turn it into a major connection and information center for people in the colonies. He also created a massive opportunity for businesses to advertise and grow their business in ways they couldn't previously do.
The power of the press was finally in the hands of the people. Information was able to spread fast and people began to feel more connected than ever. It was their news, their freedom, and most likely nothing they would have expected to see, or quite frankly nothing they would be very proud of seeing or hearing what it has become now in 2021.
The House manager spoke about rhetoric, about a constant drumbeat of heated language.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
You gotta be ready to throw a punch. You have to be ready to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
But I thought he should have punched him in the face.
I feel like punching. If you're in high school, I'd take you behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish you were in high school, I could take him behind the gym.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Exhibit here. Give me a break. Give me a large break here.
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
When was the last time an actor assassinated the president?
about blowing up the White House. And it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do you want to know what my expertise are? Black in America. I've been Black in America my whole life, all 30 years. And I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
I'll yield back.
America's under attack, and they're all around us. I'm talking about liberal Democrats, and they're out to destroy everything that we've worked so hard for. Mammoth Nation's here to fight for you. You only get one vote, so let's join forces. We support conservative lawmakers and the causes you hold so dearly. We stand behind our police, veterans, the Second Amendment, and much more. We need your help, so join today.
We've been dancing with the devil way too long. I know it's fun, but get ready to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and abusers. We need you now before we're too far gone. I hope one day they finally see the truth.
You are watching the Exceptional Conservative Network. For more information, go to www.tecntv.com.